For giving me an opportunity to speak, Shri Gaayatri Mandir. So, just a quick recap of what we heard yesterday. So, we were hearing the glories of Shri Krishna, and I was trying to emphasize the point of the different sampradayas, and so that you can have some context on what I'm speaking, right, from where I'm speaking. So, we heard about what differentiates Krishna for, in particular, the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, which is the perspective that I'm speaking from, right? So, and we understood that Shri Krishna is considered the supreme personality of Godhead, above all others, for the Gaudiyas, right? And this is because it is the conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam. So the Gaudiyas, their highest text is Srimad Bhagavatam, right? And in there, as I said, the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam begins with this Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, which means Vyasadeva is offering his obeisances to the Vasudeva, meaning the son of Vasudeva. Right? This is one meaning of the name Vasudeva. There are others who interpret the meaning of Vasudeva as also being, because there's also a Lord named Lord Vasudeva. Right? He is an eternal Narayana. Right? It's all pervading. Right? So they interpret it this way as well. So, but the reason that the Gaudiyas continue to say no, the correct interpretation is, you can interpret it both ways, it's fine, neither is wrong, but they emphasize this meaning is the son of Vasudeva, because as you go and you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, you will see there are praises again and again for Krishna, right from the very beginning, right? And throughout. So they're look at the entire text as a whole, and then you can make your conclusion. What is the meaning of that first word? And actually that very first verse, it is said that the entire Bhagavatam is an explanation. The rest of the 17,999 verses are just to explain that first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? But I was also reminded that the Srimad Bhagavad Katha is something that maybe not discussed open and in public with everyone and everyone. So, but what is to be discussed for everyone and everyone is, what did Sri Krishna do when he was here, right? What was his one primary, what you would say, objectives, right? And I read you all the very famous verse, it's probably the most famous verse, Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata apyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam srijamyaham, right? Pavitranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam dharma samsapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge, right? For anyone that has ever seen the Mahabharata series, these two verses probably, scorched into our memories. Right? So what is he saying though? It is actually the verse that enlivens all of Sri Krishna's devotees, right? Because he's promising that, oh Arjuna, again and again I come to reestablish Dharma, right? And what do? I destroy the miscreants and elevate the sadhus, the devotees, right? Enliven the devotees in particular. So, how does he do this, right? That is revealed to us by Vyasadeva on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, right? His great work, the Mahabharata. In there, I said yesterday, Mahabharata is called Panchama Veda, or is respected as the fifth Veda, because within it contains Srimad Bhagavad Gita, right? Where Shri Krishna speaks directly to Arjuna about many different topics, right? But ultimately, the whole topic is to reestablish Dharma, right? That is the whole intent of the message that he's giving, right? And at the very beginning of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, it is important for us to understand what's happening, right? We'll hear some things about what's being said at the very first verse of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and just look into it a little more deeply, maybe than we normally usually hear, right? This is also what I'm about to say is backed up by Srimad Bhagavatam. And so as we go, I'll relate the pastime as it goes. So it starts. Does anybody know what is the first verse of Srimad Bhagavad Gita? How does it start? Even before that, though. Even before that, there's something. Dhritarashtra uvacha. Dhritarashtra. That's how it starts. Dhritarashtra uvacha. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. Right? So, it begins Dhritarashtra uvacha. Why does Bhagavad Gita begin with Dhritarashtra? For anyone who has read Mahabharata, Dhritarashtra is not the hero of the story. He is quite frankly the big villain of the story. Many people think Duryodhana is the big villain of the story, but we have to understand Dhritarashtra is actually the scheming mind behind the entire thing. Right? It is he who raised Duryodhana to be that way. Right? Duryodhana is an expression of Dhritarashtra's own desires. Right? Now, what is the history? So we'll go in a little bit and hear the history. So, we heard yesterday of Vyasadeva, right? How did he get born? Anybody remember?
He didn't born.
Yeah, how did he appear though? He has a mother, right?
Yeah.
Who's his mother? Who's his father? How did it happen? I was mentioning yesterday.
I'm not thinking really.
Yeah. Alright, so just to recap. So Vyasadeva appeared from Mother Satyavati and Parashara Muni, right? Remember, the story was that Mother Satyavati was within the belly of a fish, a giant fish, and her adopted father found her. He was a fisherman, right? He found the fish. When he cut the fish open, there was inexplicably this young girl, right? And he fell in love with the young girl because he didn't have a child, and he took care of her and raised her as his own, right? And what did she do? She used to ferry people across the river. And then one day, Parashara Muni comes, and he asks her to ferry him across. And when they reached the middle of the river, there was a island, right, in the middle of the river. Because if anyone's actually seen the Yamuna, it might not be so broad now, but at certain points in time, it was very wide across, right? So there was an island, just like in Mississippi here, there's an island, right? Once in a while you'll find. So there was an island, and he stopped, and Parashara Muni told Mother Satyavati that you will be the mother of a great saint. That is your destiny, right? And she said, how will that happen? I'm unmarried. He said, I will give you that child now. And she said, I'm not married. Why would I do that, right? So he promised her, no, your virginity will remain intact, right? This will not be a normal birth. And so he blessed her, and it is said even this way, it is that spiritual beings, they don't go through the normal process of the sperm and the ovum, right? That a normal human being goes through. It comes from the heart of Parashara Muni to the heart of Mother Satyavati, and then Vyasadeva appears, And he immediately becomes fully grown. And he starts walking away. And he tells his mother, because his mother is a little distraught, right? Your child just gets up and walks away just like that, right? So she has affection for him. But he says, "Oh mother, I'm going now to do austerities, but in a time of need, you can call on me and I will come." Right? So this is very important for us to remember, right? In her time of need, if she calls him, he will come, no matter what he's doing. Right? So this is Vyasadeva's promise. And particularly, his name at that time was Krishna Dvaipayana, right? Because he was born on that island, right? And he is considered an incarnation of Narayana, right? So he is considered that incarnation. What is his purpose? His purpose is to divide the Vedas and collect all the Shastras to provide it for this age. That is why he gets the title Vyasadeva, right? Or Veda Vyasa, right? Veda Vyasa meaning he separated the Vedas, as I discussed last night. Right? So he walks away and he leaves. Now, some time goes by, and the king of Hastinapur comes by, and he notices there's this enchanting smell that is surrounding everywhere. Now, because of the meeting between Parashara Muni and Mother Satyavati, he blessed her that she would have this attractive sin. Right? She would be attractive for miles. Her sin would be so attractive, right? So one day, the king of Hastinapur, Maharaj Shantanu, is his name, right? He is traveling, and he was married to the Ganga personified, right? But there is a backstory between them, right? Ganga agreed to marry him, but under one condition. And these conditions of spiritual beings are very severe, right? They're not ordinary conditions we can think of. So her condition was, whatever I do, you will never question me. And the moment you question me, I will leave. This was her condition. And she said, will you accept? And Maharaj Shantanu, he said, yes, I accept. Because he was very much in love with her, right? So they got married. They had one child. Maharaj Shantanu was very happy because he wanted an heir, right, to the throne. So now he has an heir. But he sees, as soon as Mother Ganga gets up with the baby, she takes the baby and she starts walking to the Ganga, right? And what does she do? She takes it, places it in the water, and then turns around. And Maharaj Shantanu is following her, so he gets shocked, right? And he sees her, and she just simply turns and smiles. She doesn't say anything. And now he's remembering his promise, right? Because at least back then, when you give your word, it meant something, especially for a Maharaj, right? To give their word, so he held his tongue, right? He promised I wouldn't ever question her. So, nothing. Now this happened 7 more times, or 6 more times, right? So 7 children went like this. Now the 8th is born. And it's like always, she's finished giving birth, she gets up, she takes the baby, and she's walking to the river. Maharaj Shantanu cannot bear this time. And he says, oh, no, at least let this one live. Right? So she agrees. She says, oh, I agree, but you have broken your word, and so I will leave. But I'm going to take this child with me so that he may get proper education from the great sages, because I'm going to heaven. Right? She's not an ordinary personality that stays here, right? She says, I'm going to the celestial planets, and there, this child will learn from such great sages as Brihaspati, Vashishta, and Lord Parashurama, right? He will become the most wise and the greatest warrior that has ever lived, right? And his name was Devavrata, right? So she took him. Now, there's a backstory even behind that. So why does Mother Ganga do such a thing, right? She is Papa Nashini, right? The one who destroys sins simply by her touch. But then we see, oh, what a strange thing that she's dunking newborn children into the water, right? The story was that these 8 children actually were the 8 Vasus, right? They're great celestial beings, and they had committed an offense to the great sage Vashishta, and he cursed them to be born as on the earth, right? And they, in turn, took refuge. They prayed and offered their obeisances to Mother Ganga, that you are the great reliever of sins, right? So, if you are kind to us, even though we are cursed by Vashishta Muni, we may be relieved of our curse very quickly. So she says, I will accept that you will all be born from my womb, and because you will be in contact from me, direct contact with me, you will be absolved of all your sins. And as soon as you're born, I will place you back in the river so that you may go back to your original places. So this is what was happening. That was the backstory, right? But this 8th one was the other Vasu, and he was the leader of all the Vasus, right? And he couldn't get away from the curse so easily, right? So his destiny was such that because you're the leader, you have more responsibility, so you have to stay on the earth. But he became a great personality, right? He became, and the story goes, this is how his story, you'll all know his name when you hear his other name that he's famous as, right? So one day, Maharaj Shantanu, Ganga Devi has left. Many years have passed by, right? Devavrata comes back, and Ganga Devi introduces him to his father and leaves him. He says, she says to her husband, she says, I have raised him to be the most qualified prince, crown prince, to take over the kingdom from you, right? And now I'm returning him into your care. And then she leaves. Right? So Devavrata offers his obeisances to his father, and he's very loyal to his father. And his father was still fairly young, right? So he was wandering around, and then he saw a beautiful woman, right? So he became very attracted. This woman happened to be Mother Satyavati, right? And so she was crossing the river, and he got off his chariot, got on the boat, and kept staring at her as she went back and forth across the river. And finally she said, don't you have anywhere to go? Right? So he said, no, I'm very much in love with you. She said, well, that may be, but without my father's agreement, nothing happened. Right? So he said, okay, well, let me meet your father and let us discuss. Now her father is very ambitious. Her father, seeing, Maharaj Shantanu, he knows who Maharaj Shantanu is. He's the emperor of the world at the time, right? Hastinapur was ruling the world at the time, right? So he says, thinks big, right? So what does he say? There's one condition if you want to marry my daughter. Her children, you have to promise, will be the next prince, crown prince. Even though Devavrata is already he's already marked crown prince. So what does Maharaj Shantanu say? What do you all think?
Yeah, agreed.
No. He rejects it. He says, no, I cannot do that. Not to Devavrata. He is a noble personality, and the kingdom cannot just be handed away to whomever you like. It is the person who is most deserving, right? So this was his thing, he said, and he walked away heavy-hearted, right? Because he was in love with Mother Satyavati. She was also in love with him. It was kind of love at first sight kind of thing. Maybe some of you all might know that. Uncle Ramjas, So, it was this thing, he walked away very heavy-hearted. And now, he was walking very mopily in the palace. And his son is old enough. Devavrata is over 16 years old. He could understand something is wrong with my father. I don't know what's going on, but he's not saying anything. Right? So, he asked the charioteer. Because the charioteer took him, right? He must have some idea. So the charioteer took him, yes, I stopped here. And he went and he visited that hut there. And he came back looking very morose. So Devavrata goes. And he finds out and he hears what is all the conditions and whatnot. Right? So him being a very loyal son, he wanted his father to be happy. Right? So he told the fisherman, he says, if that is the case, fine. Their child can be the next crown prince. I will give up the prince. Right? But the fisherman doesn't say, he says, no, I cannot believe your word just alone. Right? So Devavrata then says, why? He says, even if I can agree that maybe you are a very truthful person, but if you have children, they will also have a rightful claim to the throne because you're the eldest son. Right? So then, what about your children? So Devavrata thought now. And then he said, a terrible vow. So it says. It says, I will never have a child. I will never be married. I will never have any relation with any woman. Ever. In my life. So, and this is what it said, was a terrible vow. Right? And he became known as Bhishma. The one who made the terrible vow. This is what the name means. Right? He's a man of great stature. Right? He is also one of the great Mahajans. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Yamaraja himself relays to his Yamadutas that there are 12 great Mahajans. These Mahajans are great personalities who know the intricate details of that most confidential bhakti. Right? And this Bhishma Deva is among one of them. Right? Who are these other personalities? So you can understand the greatness of Bhishma Deva. They are none other than Lord Brahma, Narada, Lord Shiva, the Kumaras, Lord Yamaraja himself, Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, and so on and so forth. Kapila Deva, Janaka Maharaj, who's the father of Mother Sita. So these are all these different great personalities. So Bhishma Deva is among them. Right? And he's also praised in Srimad Bhagavatam and throughout Mahabharata. Right? He's one of the great heroes of Mahabharata, even though he's fighting on the side of the Kauravas. Right? So, and he's also one of the greatest devotees that has ever walked the earth of Sri Krishna. Right? Now, he makes this promise, and he says something else. He says, for as long as I am alive, I will protect whoever sits on that throne as if though they are my own father. So he guarantees now the fisherman that nobody will be able to trouble his son's kingdom because he's the greatest warrior on the earth. Right? So the king or the fisherman becomes very enthusiastic now. He agrees. He says, okay, yes, Satyavati can marry Mother Maharaj Shantanu. So they bring and they have the union. When Maharaj Shantanu hears, he feels incredibly terrible. Right? He says, oh my son, what a terrible vow you have done for my sake. Right? So he feels great regret to hear Bhishma Deva's vow. But he also says, "O Bhishma, I grant you the boon that due to your great vow, whenever you will only die when you want to die." Right? So, only when he wants to die, then he will die. This almost actually turns to almost like a curse to Bhishma Deva, actually. Right? Because he just swore that as long as he is alive, he will protect the throne and whoever sits on it as if though they're my father. Right? Now what happens if somebody bad sits on the throne?
He'll have to protect.
Still has to protect them, right? So this is the reason he fights on the side of the Kauravas, right? Because Dhritarashtra and then his son Duryodhana sits on the throne. He's bound to his vow, Bhishma, right? So, how does the story continue then? So, Mother Shantanu and Maharaj Shantanu and Mother Satyavati, they have 2 children, right? And the first son marries, but he dies very young. Or he doesn't get married, actually he dies before he gets married. The second son marries. And as he marries his wives, named Ambika and Ambalika, right? There were 3 sisters actually, Amba, Ambalika, and Ambika and Ambalika, right? The older sister, they were all actually kidnapped by Bhishma from Kashi, right? And brought from their Swayamvar to marry, I believe Vichitravirya was his name, right? But he died before they could conceive a child. And now, Mother Satyavati is worried. She's running the kingdom with Bhishma Deva. And they're wondering, well, how will we continue the line? She turns to Bhishma and she says, "Oh Bhishma, at that time, it was accepted that if the younger brother dies, the older brother may foster a child in the wife of the younger brother, right? To continue the lineage. That's the only sake, right? It wasn't for, that is not something that's appropriate in this age now, but in Dwapar Yuga it was allowed, right? Bhishma Deva though refuses. He says, "No, I am bound by my vow. This is the vow that allowed my father to marry you, right? I will not give up my vow." So, Mother Satyavati is thinking now, what to do, right? So she remembers, oh, I have my son, Krishna Dvaipaya, right? So she calls him. She sends a message and calls him. Now, Vyasadeva says, "Oh mother, I am willing to come, but right now I am practicing austerities," right? And I don't know if any of you have ever seen the images of the rishis when they're in Kumbh Mela. Have you seen? They have very matted hair. They look not very welcoming, right? They look ghastly, almost, right? They look a little scary, right? Same simple word, scary. They look scary. So Vyasadeva, because he's engaged in austerities, right? He says, "Oh mother, right now I'm engaged in austerities and I look very ghastly, right? And if I were to try to procreate or have children at this time, Ambika and Ambalika, they might not see me in a good light. And therefore the children may have some issues, right? So maybe wait. Give me a couple months to a year, and then, right?" Mother Satyavati said, "No doing. The kingdom needs an heir, right? We cannot keep, the people will get restless, you can imagine, right? There's all politics and all these things going on, you can imagine. It's not an easy thing to run a kingdom the size of Hastinapur." So he agrees, because of course it's his mother. And he says, "Okay, mother, I will accept your order," right? So he comes in that form, and they send first Ambika to go in front of him. And she sees him. And what does she do?
Closes her eyes.
She closes her eyes, right? Because she's afraid, right? Not normal thing. She's a young girl, right? She shuts her eyes. So he says to her, you will have a very wise and strong child, but he will be blind. Right? And it said, later on, it'll said, not just physically blind, but spiritually blind. Right? Because you cannot see a sage either for who they are, right? You're judging outwardly, right? You don't have that inward vision to see. So she goes away. They send the next Ambalika, and she goes, and what she does, what does she do? Does anybody remember?
She was scared.
She was scared. She was like scared, you know, like you turned yellow, right? You know, like when they say, are you yellow, right? Where's the saying come from? Because like all the blood drains from your face, right?
Yeah.
So you become like pale, right? You become very pale. So he tells her, your son will be very virtuous, a great warrior, but he will be somewhat sickly, right? His paleness. Usually when someone's sickly, they're a little pale, right? So now they're discussing, we don't want to go again in front of him. Because they're like, now you need to go again and have it conceive, a proper child, right? Because someone who's sickly, someone who's blind, they can't run the kingdom all that well, right? So they're saying, go again, but neither of them wants anyone, nothing doing. So they send their maidservant instead, right? So one of their maidservants goes, and she looks at Vyasadeva with utmost respect, right? And she serves him to the best of her ability. And he says to her, your child will be the epitome of Dharma. Right? So, this first child of Ambika became known as Dhritarashtra. The second child of Ambalika, or the child of Ambalika, became known as Pandu. Right? And the third child of the maidservant was named Vidura. Right? So, this Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. Now, because of this blindness, after they grew up, Bhishma Deva himself raised them all to be proper leaders, right? All three brothers. And it was at the time to decide, now that they're grown, who is going to be king? Who's going to be crowned king? And Bhishma Deva was about to say, I think Dhritarashtra, because he is the eldest, right? But at that time, Vidura, who is known as Dharma, he is the incarnation of Dharmaraja, or Yamaraja, right? Another name for Lord Yamaraja is Dharmaraja, right? So he says to Bhishma Deva, he says, I object, because Dhritarashtra is blind, he will not be able to rule the kingdom properly, because he will not be able to understand when this person is lying to him, when that person is lying to him, right? He will not be able to see, between the lines, right? When you're talking to someone, if they might be saying something, but you can see from their facial expression something else, right? Maybe men know this from their wives, or wives know this from them. So,
Good observation.
right? So, he says all these things, right? If someone's spying, he won't be able to understand. So there are many defects that, because of his blindness, it'll prevent him from ruling properly, right? It was a serious point. It was a fair point. And Bhishma Deva agreed. And Dhritarashtra had to concede. And therefore, Pandu was made the king, right? Now, Dhritarashtra always held on to this.
Wow.
I should have been the king, right? And so this was the thing that festered in him, right? Throughout his entire life. And that festering thing that we don't realize as parents, whatever you're saying all the time, the children pick up, right? Or how you're acting all the time, the children pick up. Even if you say something, you might say the right thing, what Dhritarashtra usually does. He says the right thing. But the children can pick up, oh, that's not what my mother and father are thinking, right? They're thinking something else, right? So the Duryodhana could understand this, right? He knew the ambition of Dhritarashtra, right? And Dhritarashtra's argument was, yes, fine, I couldn't be king because I was disabled. Fair. What is wrong with my son? There's nothing wrong with Duryodhana. He wasn't a bad ruler. He was very just. Criminals feared him like the plague. Right? He was very heavy-handed. He's very generous. His only really big downfall was he didn't like the Pandavas. He didn't like to see their shadow. Why? Because he was raised to be the king. Right? How did it come about? Well, Pandu was made king, and then one day Pandu went to the forest and shot an arrow, and he killed a sage and his wife, right? As they were embracing one another. And when he heard the scream, he ran, and the sage said, "What are you doing shooting an arrow and not knowing under where you're firing?" Right? So I curse you, as soon as you embrace your wife, you too shall die. Right? So Pandu had this curse, and because of the curse, he decided that I'm going to abdicate the throne for a period of time to go and perform austerities in the forest, right? And he went with his two wives. He had two wives named Kunti Devi and Madhuri. And Dhritarashtra had another wife named, what's her name again? Anybody know? Gandhari, yeah. Right? She's from Gandhar Desh, which is what are we, present day Afghanistan area. So she, the three of them leave the palace, and he installs Dhritarashtra as the king in waiting, basically. Right? He's waiting for him to come back. But so happens that when they were in the forest, one day Maharaj Shantanu embraces Madhuri and he dies. Right? And Madhuri accepts Sati with him. Now, you have to understand, the Sati thing is not a common thing. Right? Sometimes a lot of people, they criticize Sanatana Dharma that, it propagates that a wife should sit on the pyre with her husband. Right? And this was somehow prevalent all over India. Actually, this was very rare, and it was something that was completely voluntary. Right? So, whatever reason, Mother Madhuri, what was the reason? She felt great shame that she knew about the curse, but she also encouraged her husband. Right? And therefore she felt great shame. So she said, I don't want him to go on this journey alone, I will accompany him. So the two of them went, and Kunti Devi was left to raise their children. 5 of them in all, the Pandavas. Right? So now they come back. Right? You can imagine, Kunti Devi is the rightful queen of Hastinapur. But Dhritarashtra is running like, I am the king. Right? So she is like, imagine going into your own house, right? And you're like the servant. This is her position with her children, right? And many things go by. And during this time, while they were in the forest, Dhritarashtra was raising Duryodhana. Oh, Duryodhana, you're going to be the next king. All of a sudden, the Pandavas come, and Yudhishthira comes, and everybody says Yudhishthira is older than you, and he's the son of Pandu, who was the former king, and therefore Yudhishthira is the rightful king. Duryodhana doesn't like this at all, and for this reason he doesn't like the Pandavas at all, right? Because he feels they are taking away my birthright, right? So, when the first verse of Srimad Bhagavad Gita begins, Dhritarashtra Uvacha, this we understand a little bit of why Dhritarashtra is asking this question. What is he asking? O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? Such a strange question to ask. If they're gathered there with a desire to fight, what are they going to do? Right? They're going to fight, right? But why does he ask this question? It said, the acharyas, many acharyas have commented, as we know, Bhagavad Gita is one of the most, probably the most commentated shastra that we have in Sanatana Dharma. And so many acharyas, they explain that this verse revealed Dhritarashtra's mind, because he's very fearful, right? Because the word, the Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, this is the field of Dharma. And on the other side is Shri Krishna, who comes to reestablish Dharma. So if he's on that side, and this is Dharma Kshetre, oh, my children will lose, right? So what is going to happen, right? So he worries, is the influence of this field, this pious area, is it going to influence my children that they may want to make peace with the Pandavas, right? Because Krishna can do that also, right? He can influence people in many ways, right? But he doesn't want that. Dhritarashtra does not want peace. This is a very important thing to understand. And you understand this when you read Mahabharata. He wants the Pandavas to be eradicated, right? Because then there is no problem with having to worry about the kingdom being separated, right, from him. He wants to be the ruler of the kingdom, and he is the ruler of the kingdom, right? Duryodhana is ruling, but he is the father of Duryodhana. He gets all the benefits, right? Now he's also wondering that, as I said earlier, Shri Krishna is on the other side, and the Pandavas will win, right? So he knows, and he's worried. So this is why he asks, what happened? Oh, Sanjay, what happened? He's very nervous, and he's asking this question, right? And as we know, Shri Krishna reestablishes Dharma by, he tells Arjuna, oh Arjuna, just pick up the bow and fight. I have already killed all of these men. They're already dead, right? They said that Bhima's grandson, he saw, his name was, I forget his name now. No, Bhima. No, that is Arjuna's son. Gatkochat.
Yes.
Yeah, right? But his son, Babrik was his name, right? So this was Bhishma, or Bhima's grandson. Gatotkach was Bhima's son, and his grandson, or Bhima's grandson, was named Babrik, right? He was Gatotkach's son, right? So he was a great warrior, and he came to the battlefield, and he said, he resolved that whichever side is losing, I will join that side. So Shri Krishna understood he was such a great warrior that whoever side he goes on, he will turn the side to the height of the war. So Krishna meets him halfway, right? And Shri Krishna tells him, shoot all the leaves off this tree, right? And make sure you pierce every leaf with an arrow. Can you do that? He wants to see a skill, right? So he takes out his bow and arrow, he fires the leaf, and now there's one leaf that was on the ground. Shri Krishna takes his foot and he puts it on the leaf. Right? He just wanted to test him, and he said, he fired an arrow and he pierced all the leaves, and one came and hit Krishna's foot, right? So he apologized, oh Krishna, what is this? And Krishna said, no problem. I recognize your skill, right? So whichever side you decide to join, they're going to win the war. But the problem, Ilal Babrik, is that your grandfather's side is actually winning right now. But due to your resolve, if you were to join, you would allow Duryodhana to win this battle. Right? So therefore, I've come here to ask something of you. So Babri says, anything. You are the Lord, I will give you whatever you want. He says, give me your head.
Wow.
So he says, yes. So Shri Krishna takes his head with his Sudarshan Chakra, but he says, oh Krishna, please allow me to at least witness the entire fighting. Right? So Shri Krishna agrees, and he says, yes, you will live, even though your head will be severed from your body, so you cannot participate in the war. You will place your head on this hill, and you will be able to observe the entire war. So he said, Babri later would say that he saw this fearsome figure that looked like Rudra, right? Roaring, 5 heads, and everywhere he was going, he was destroying the army of the Kauravas, right? So this was Sri Krishna's personification, destroying everything before Arjuna could even do anything, right? So, and I'll end with this. So as we hear the story of Bhishma, during the war, Bhishma is stuck due to his vow, right? So what is the greatness of Krishna in this aspect? Sri Krishna had promised that I will not take up weapons in this war, right? I will simply act as an advisor, whoever side wants me, right? And both Duryodhana and Arjuna went to his house one day to request his help, right? And Krishna was sleeping, so Duryodhana got there first, and he sat by Krishna's head. And Arjuna came second, and he sat by Krishna's feet. And they were both waiting for Krishna to wake up, right? So Krishna wakes up and he sees Arjuna. He says, "Oh, Par, you're here? What do you want?" Right? Duryodhana right away, "I was here first." So Krishna says, "Oh, Duryodhana, you know the tradition is the younger person gets to ask first, right? So Arjuna gets to ask first. So, oh Arjuna, what do you want?" So Duryodhana agrees. He says to Krishna, he says, "Oh Krishna, you know of the war that's coming. I've come to ask that you come to our side." He says, "Are you sure, Par? You know I promised that I will not participate." He says, "Yes, I know." He says, "Okay, very well. But that means Duryodhana will get my Narayana Sena, my army." Duryodhana was actually, that's what he came for. He was very happy, right? So, he was very happy. So, and this is how they said the army of the Kauravas outnumbered the Pandavas' army almost 2-1. It was 11 Akshavanis to 7 Akshavanis, right?
Yeah.
So, this was happening. Now, another incident before when the Pandavas were in the forest, Duryodhana was captured by Gandharvas because he was very proud of himself. He wanted to show off to the Pandavas because they were in the forest exile, right? So he wanted to rub it in their face, basically. And somehow or other, he got captured by these Gandharvas. And nobody could rescue him, right? Karna ran away, right? And it turns out Bhima and Arjuna went because Yudhishthira sent him. He said, "No, he's coming to..." Yudhishthira said, "No, he's still our cousin, right? Even though we have an enmity within us, he's in need of help. You should go and help him." So Arjuna goes and helps, and he defeats the Gandharvas. And Duryodhana tells Arjuna, "Oh Arjuna, I will give you whatever boon you want for your service." Arjuna says, "I won't ask now. I'll ask you later." Right? So it turns out this war is going on now, and you say Duryodhana accuses Bhishma Deva of being biased to the Pandavas because he's not killing them, right? Even though he can kill them, he's not killing them. So Duryodhana accuses him, "You are being favorable to the Pandavas and not doing your duty as the commander of the army, right? So Bhishma is, as we said, someone of his word, right? How dare Duryodhana say this? He says, all right, very well. See, I prepared these 5 arrows. Each one is meant for one of the Pandavas. Tomorrow I will use these arrows to kill each one of them. So Duryodhana got very happy. He said, really? He says, yes, don't you trust my words? So he knows the words of Bhishma. It means a lot, right? So he says, yes, I trust your words. But let me keep these arrows for safekeeping. I don't want you to change your mind. Or maybe something might happen and, Krishna's on the other side, he might do some trick or something, right? So you might get swayed by Krishna because you're his devotee, but I won't get swayed by him, right? So let me keep these arrows and I'll give them to you tomorrow. So Bhishma Deva said, okay, very well. Now, that night, Krishna tells Arjuna, oh Arjuna, go to Duryodhana and ask him for the boon. He said, what boon shall I ask him for, Krishna? He says, tell him the 5 arrows that Bhishma Deva gave him, give them to you. So, nobody else knows about this, by the way, right? There's only a secret between Bhishma Deva and Duryodhana, right? So, Arjuna goes to his tent. And that time, even though they were fighting so terribly with one another, at night, they would go and intermingle. This is the nature of the Kshatriyas. One minute they're ready to kill each other, next minute they're best buddies. Right? So this is how they are, right? So Duryodhana welcomes, oh, come Arjuna, what do you want? He says, you remember that boon you had promised? He says, yes. What do you want? Do you want the war to end? Do you want to be the king? What? Say now, I'll give you. Imagine that. Right? Arjuna said, no. You've come for those 5 arrows that Bhishma Deva gave you. So Duryodhana was kind of shocked. He's like, what? How did you know? He said, Krishna told me. Then he realized, Krishna told you. Right? So he held his word. He gave up the arrows. Now, the next morning, Bhishma Deva is saying, oh, where's the 5 arrows? Oh, I gave them to Krishna. Or gave them to Arjuna. He said, what nonsense? He said, Krishna told him about it. And Bhishma Deva laughs. He says, this trickster, Krishna. This day, I will make sure he breaks his promise. Right? I will fight with such ferocity that if he does not pick up weapons, even though he promised not to pick up weapons, if he does not pick up weapons, Arjuna will die. Right? So Bhishma Deva fought with such ferocity that Arjuna was overwhelmed. Right? And so what does Krishna do? Throws down the reins. Sees there's a chariot with its wheels broken. He runs up, grabs the chariot wheel, raises it above his head, and he starts rushing to Bhishma Deva. And Arjuna can barely hold him, and he's dragging Arjuna with him. He's rushing towards Bhishma Deva in such an angry mood. For this pastime, Krishna is called Ratangapani, the one who lifts the... He's known as that Lord which will break his own promise to fulfill the promise of his devotee. Right? So this is also a reason why we worship Shri Krishna. Right? Whose promise did he keep? Bhishma Deva's promise. He held Bhishma's promise greater than his own. And for this he's famous as Ratangapani. This is why he's called Ratangapani. Right? This form Bhishma Deva meditates on before he leaves his body. Right? So with that, we'll stop there. Again, we hear one of the great characteristics and the qualities of Sri Krishna that enlivens him to devotees from all aspects of life. Right? Bhishma Deva is in the mood of Virya Rasa, right? The fighting spirit. But even Krishna obliges to that also, right? And he frees him from his own promises, He's captured by his own words. He has no means of getting out. So Krishna frees him from that promise. Right? So with that, we'll say Nrsimha prayers and conclude. Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Praladadayini Hiranyakashipurvakshaha Shilatankanakalayi Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimho Yato Yato Yami Tato Narsimha Bahir Narsimho Hridaye Narsimho Narsimha Madin Sharanam Prapati Tava Kara Kamala Vare Nakam Adbhuta Shringam Dhalita Hiranyakashipu Tanuvrinda Keshavadrita Narhari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Narahari Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Narahari Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev So Shri Lakshmi Nrsimha Bhagavan ki So Prahlad Maharaj ki So Shri Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Shri Krishna ki
प्रेम से बोलो व्यास महाराज की
जय।